So there have been big wildfires in the western United States this year. The red skies were terrifying. Wildfires still burning?
Not very much. Actually, there were 3 wildfires that I could see from my town. And at one time, one of them was threatening our house, but also the Ecodarma Center. But now, thanks to snow and the colder weather, it looks like it's going to be okay. They are not completely out yet, but they're under control, I think.
Okay. Were there any damages to your Ecodaharma meditation center?
No, we were very lucky. There was an evacuation order. So the people who were there had to leave, but there was no damage. The fire did not spread there. Yeah.
So do you think changing climate has caused these wildfires?
Climate scientists predict that the area we are in is on the edge of the Southwest, which is becoming drier and hotter. So we know this makes fires more dangerous. So in the long run, it looks like the fires are going to continue, and they are, at least in part, a result of climate change. Yes.
Shall we talk about a few things discussed
Sure.
in your book, Ecodaharma? You mentioned that the value of meditation or the importance of realizing sunyata by themselves are insufficient as responses to our situation. And you said, in order to address wholeheartedly the problems we have faced, we need to clarify what the essential message is. What is the essential message?
Well, that's a very difficult question, right? In the Zen tradition that I trained in, right, it's a kind of koan. But I will try to explain as best I can. I mean, one part of the essential message is what you might call non-duality, right? Some Buddhists understand that the goal of Buddhism is to escape or transcend this world. But the point of non-duality is to realize our deeper relationship with it, our interdependence. So according to this understanding, the fundamental problem is the delusion of separation. The understanding that I am inside here, separate from you. And the realization of non-duality is the realization that I'm not separate, and therefore my well-being is not separate from your well-being. Our well-being is not separate from what's happening in the greater society. So if we understand this, then it definitely implies the importance of social engagement, I think.
So you mean we need to be aware of the reality that we are interconnected with other beings. Yeah, right.
And
That is the core message.
I think so.
You wanted to deliver. Yeah.
We not only need to realize that, we have to integrate it into how we live, so that we live according to that realization.
Okay, I see.
And that means to be concerned about what's happening in society.
Okay, and next question is this. As far as I know, you have participated in climate action. How does your engagement support your awakening? And what about vice versa?
So how does my engagement, so as I understand it, the most important thing that Buddhism has to offer to the modern world, and we must be aware, we are engaged in multiple crises, ecological crisis, social problems, political, economic crisis. What's really important then is, what does Buddhism have to offer that can help us understand and respond appropriately to the kind of crises that we're facing today? And frankly, I think the most important thing Buddhism has to offer is the Bodhisattva path. So we need to realize that our engagement is not a distraction from the path. You know, I think many Buddhist practitioners think that real practice is meditation, for example, and that to be engaged in society is really a distraction or wasted time. And I think the Bodhisattva path makes it very clear that our engagement is essential to our practice as well. In fact, that is how we integrate this realization of non-duality that we were talking about before. So, and if I think about it further, you know, when I started Zen practice, I lived in the Maui Zendo in Hawaii, and we did a lot of meditation together. We did retreats and such. It wasn't so difficult to have experiences, insights, maybe little awakenings. More difficult, more challenging is to integrate those into how I actually lived, or we actually live in the world. So the irony of the Bodhisattva path is that when we're engaged in the world, the person that is benefiting the most is ourselves, because it's part of our own personal transformation.
Thank you. I found you placed much emphasis on suffering by quoting Joanna Macy. What is the function of suffering in transformation?
So, you know, I think many of us feel overwhelmed by the climate crisis and the larger ecological challenge that we face today. And, you know, we don't know what we can do. We're afraid. There's a lot of grief. This is the form of suffering, a kind of grief. And we tend to repress it. We don't want to think about it because we don't know what to do. And I think on the Ecodharma path, if we want to talk that way, it's essential to stop repressing our grief and instead face it and be transformed by it. It's important for us to feel the suffering, that if we feel the suffering, it changes us and it can empower us. So grief is different from despair, right? Despair is no hope, why bother? Grief is feeling grief for what's happening, but by feeling it, it can actually make us more inclined. It can inspire us to actually start to do what we can. So in that way, I think the issue of suffering is quite interesting. The ultimate goal in Buddhism, of course, is to end suffering. But I think to end suffering, we need to face it. We need to acknowledge it and to be transformed by it.
The first step is to acknowledge the suffering. There is a suffering, right? And then we can move to how can transform the suffering. Yeah.
So
that is your
aware.
Key point, right?
Yeah, to be aware, to become aware of the suffering. And I think in daily life, in many ways, we are not aware of it. We are often, I think we are addicted to certain types of pleasure or activity, and it's a way to avoid facing our suffering. And the point of the Buddhist path is to become more aware, and that means to become more aware of our suffering, of our desires, and how the desires cause us to suffer. Yeah.
I think that a society based on economic growth is not sustainable, and our pursuit for economic growth has exploited nature and at last caused the climate and ecological crisis. We need to transform the society obsessed with perpetual economic growth into a society that is sustainable and harmonious with nature. How can Buddhism or Buddhist community contribute to this transformation?
Such an important question, yes. Again, it brings us back, I think, to desire. or to craving. In order to have continuous economic growth, a consumer society has to keep persuading us always to want more and more, right? The way consumer society works is that it gives us propaganda called advertising. And we think the next thing I buy will make me happy. In fact, I think that the real religion of the modern world, the most popular religion in the modern world is consumerism, right? And the irony is consumerism promises to make us happy, but it never does, right? It's interesting that we also now, we can read books about psychology and how psychologists have understood that what actually makes us happy, once we have a certain level of, a basic level of income, right? Enough to eat, a safe place to stay, and so forth. What psychologists have discovered is that what really makes us happy is the quality of our relationships with other people. And how wonderful it would be if more and more people could realize that. And of course, that's part of the teaching of Buddhism. So I think that the way that Buddhism encourages us to become aware of our desires rather than their victim, Buddhism encourages us very clearly, don't try to become happy by fulfilling desires, because it just does not work. And yet that's at the essence of a consumer capitalist society. And I think if that shift happens, it would really change dramatically the whole economic system, which as we know is necessary. The present economic system, if it keeps growing, it's going to destroy the earth. Or it is destroying the earth,
In South Korea, recently, different religious organizations started to work together in responding to the climate crisis. Buddhist Action Network was formed 4 months ago, and now is looking for Buddhist ways to take appropriate action. How about Buddhist groups in the United States? Is there any Buddhist groups working on climate crisis?
Yes, but it's taken quite a while for them to develop. Yes. First of all, I want to congratulate you on this new organization. I'm very excited for you and eager to see what you will be doing. In the case of the United States, I have been surprised that Buddhists have not been very progressive, at least until recently. It's taken quite a while for Buddhist and Buddhist organizations to become concerned about the ecological crisis. In some ways, in the last couple decades, especially, I think we're doing a lot better, especially the convert Buddhists in America. We're more aware of other social problems like, say, racism, or the fact that so many of our sanghas are so white and so middle class. So people are aware of this, and that's been really good. But it's only in the last couple of years that we're starting to wake up and realize just what the ecological crisis means. So we have a number of organizations that have been concerned about social engagement, but ecological focus ecology has not been their main focus. But now we have 2 groups in particular. One of them is based in Washington, D.C., and it's called One Earth Sangha. And they offer, they're mostly an online organization, but one of the things that they offer is eco-sattva training. So for those who want to be, focused on ecological work, and of course it fits in so well. An eco-sattva is a bodhisattva who focuses on the ecological crisis, and there's plenty of need for that. The other organization that I mentioned, because I've been a part of its formation, about 4 years ago, we started the Rocky Mountain EcoDharma Retreat Center up in the Rocky Mountains above Boulder, where I live. about half an hour. And we have 3 buildings, a big lodge, 180 acres of beautiful meadow, a little river, mountains. It's really delightful. And what we're doing is we are teaching retreats there. Not all of them are what I would call eco-dharma. Some of them are just enjoying the beautiful place. But several of us who teach there, we're also beginning to teach what I call eco-dharma retreats. That, for example, in addition to the meditation, and the meditation we do outside as much as possible, under trees, by the stream and so forth, in the wildflowers of the meadow. In addition to that, we also work to help people get in touch with their own grief about what's happening. And interestingly, people also go off and do a solo by themselves, where they will go into the forest and they will spend 1 or 2 nights by themselves meditating. Well, kind of like the Buddha did, following the example of the Buddha. And so whereas One Earth Sangha is largely an online organization, we are a place-based retreat center that focuses on eco-dharma. Yeah. Sorry, that's a long answer to your question.
Last one. Actually, do you have any messages for Korean readers and Korean Buddhists?
Well, yes. I think this is a very, very exciting time. We live in a very dangerous time when there are many challenges that we really have to resolve, or civilization as we know it may not survive. It's also a really exciting time for Buddhism, in that Buddhism has so much to contribute that can help us respond appropriately to the challenges we face. But it also works the other way around. It's not simply that we simply apply Buddhism. Buddhism has a lot to offer, but I think that Buddhism also has a lot to learn, right? Traditional Buddhism has focused so much on individual awakening, on personal transformation, and for historical reasons, it has largely ignored the political and the social. Now we're in a situation where it's not possible to do that anymore, that we have to ask ourselves, what is it within the Buddhist tradition? What does it have to offer that gives us insight and can help us respond to our situation? And the wonderful thing about Buddhism is, because it emphasizes transformation, it emphasizes impermanence and insubstantiality, Buddhism has this potential to evolve, to transform, to meet our need. So I think this is a very, very exciting time, not only for human civilization, but for this wonderful tradition, Buddhism, because it has this opportunity to transform in this direction and actually, I think, play an important role. In particular, as I emphasized before, the idea of the bodhisattva or eco-sattva path, where our practice has a double side. We continue to work on our own personal transformation, but we know that that's not enough. We also need to be engaged, that's part of our contribution and our transformation as well. So, I think that is such an important model that Buddhism has to offer. It's really essential if we're going to actually successfully address the kind of challenges we face today.
Thank you for your messages.